Good morning, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. I'm going to get started in a second. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get this meeting started. Welcome everyone to this is, I guess, our third modeling user group meeting. And we've got a couple of things on our agenda, which I'll go ahead and paste in the chat. And I hope we're able to get to that modeling clinic at the end, Mamie, so that we can have that discussion. For those of you who didn't notice it, there is a there is a it's letting people in still. So we've got the agenda, but also if you in the thread on the forum on this chat, Mamie posted a modeling question, and I just put that. It's in the agenda. The link is in the agenda. And Adam, I can see your screen now. So
okay, I'm sorry. Are you seeing the screen with arches or the screen without arches?
Without arches.
Okay. I was afraid of that. Thanks.
No worries. So yeah. But before we begin, I think we can go ahead and start with introductions for everyone. But again, if you want to preview, if you haven't already seen that modeling problem, the link is in the chat in the agenda. And yeah, I'll go ahead and start with introductions. Hi, everyone. I'm Annabelle Enriquez, and I realized I didn't change my window to say my name, but I'm Annabelle Enriquez, and I am a project specialist at the Getty Conservation Institute. And let's see, letting people in. Yes, and I've been on the Arches project team since 2013. And one of the things I do on the Arches project team is I work on the modeling aspects of arches. So that's one of the reasons why I thought would start this group, which we started last year, or I started last year. And I know that a lot of people here have also been part of that group since then. But I'm going to go ahead and we'll do this popcorn style. And so I will turn it over to Adam. And Adam, if you could throw it to someone else for the introduction.
Sure.
And you're done.
I'm Adam Lodge. Work at Farallon Geographics. Been part of the Arches project since earliest of days. Happy to be here, and I'll be doing the presentation on sort of the mechanics of developing arches models. Oh, and I get to choose, and I see Mike Hayworth on my right. So Mike Hayworth, you're up.
Cheers. Hi, everybody. I work for the Arcadia Fund in the UK. We run a whole series of projects that are recording heritage sites in the Global South. All of our projects use arches and therefore have a particular interest around kind of modeling issues. So I'm kind of representing them. I'll hand over to Eric. Hi, Eric.
Hi, thank you. My name is Eric Kanza, an archaeologist by background with a specialization in data management, and I work on a consulting basis with the Getty Conservation Institute in support of arches, and I do lots of ETL things. So data modeling is really important to my life right now. And let me pass it to Rob.
Thanks, Eric. I'm Rob Gaston. Sorry, fumbling with my camera here. I'm Rob Gaston. I'm a developer on Arches, have been since the very beginning. Work with Adam at Farallon Geographics, and I'm just here to listen in and perhaps add some details about the future of arches if it becomes relevant. And I'll pass it to George.
Hi, my name is George Brisaker. I am the CEO of a small semantic consulting company. That's one hat. I am a chair of the Arches Resource Modeling Working Group, which eventually should aim to provide some approved packages of models that you can follow for documenting things. And I'm a co-chair of the CDOC CRM SIG and very engaged in ontology work. And I will pick Yael to go next. If I've pronounced your name properly.
I'm sorry, I'm driving, so I'll mainly be listening. I'm from Israel, from the Antiquities Authority, and working with arches on mainly in academics training and building inventories with students.
Yeah, and since
I
you're
can't really
driving,
see this. Excuse me?
go ahead. My apologies.
I can't really see the screen, so you pick the next person.
That's what I was going to say. So
Okay.
since you can't see the screen, I will pick Sarah, who
Thank you.
looks like she can't see the screen. Thank you.
Hi everyone, it's morning here in Los Angeles, and I'm Sarah Delgadillo, and I'm with the Office of Historic Resources with the Department of Los Angeles City Planning for the City of LA. In my role with my team, I am the data coordinator and manager for the Data and Historic Places LA, and I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but our instance of Arches was developed for us, and so I'm not as intimately familiar with developing resource models, and that's one thing that I'm very interested in. And thank you, Annabelle, for developing those for us.
And Adam.
Adam. And I missed the first meeting, but I'm happy to join this team, this group, and I'm excited to learn all that we have to learn. So I'll popcorn it over to Maggie Smith, our sister city.
Hi, thanks. Hello, everyone. With San Francisco Planning Department, I'm on the San Francisco Citywide Cultural Resources Survey, and for a period of time was very intimately familiar with the Arches designer and all of the modeling, and trying to figure it out both on a whiteboard and then in reality, and what our data models look like, trying to solve for a couple different use cases of like in-field survey work as well as in-office evaluation and community engagement. So I really am very excited about these meetings. So thanks again, Annabelle, for putting this together. And let's see, I will popcorn to Tris.
Chris, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. And we still can't hear you. Okay. I'll popcorn it over to Mamie.
Good morning. My name's Maini. I work in Auckland in New Zealand. We recently, last year now, almost 12 months ago, launched our instance of Arches, looking at collecting the heritage records for Auckland City, Auckland region. And so I was the heritage SME on the project and did a lot of the model developing. And yes, could have done with this group back then, but I'm very pleased that it exists now. It's wonderful just having an opportunity to talk with other people who have worked in using Arches Designer and creating data models, just to get some ideas of best practice and move things forward. Thank you. I'm going to pop it over to Jana from Flax and Teal.
Hello. So yeah, Jana from, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Sorry, I didn't realize that my mic, if it was on or wasn't. Sorry. So yeah, Jana from Flax and Teal. We are UK provider for Arches, and I'm information scientist, and I am part of a small group who's implementing it now for Northern Ireland, and I have a hand in designing, talking to the client, and that kind of jazz. And I'll pass it on to, oh shoot, who hasn't been it? Robert?
Thank you. Robert Cheatham. I'm based in Philadelphia. I've known about Arches for quite some time, but I am not very familiar with it, the details of it. And so I'm here to learn about it. I have a project here in Philadelphia that I think might be a good application, and I'd like to learn more about the data modeling. I will popcorn it to maybe David Myers.
Thanks, Robert. I'm David Myers with the GCI Arches team in Los Angeles, and like Yael, I'm driving right now. So Annabelle, choose the next person to introduce.
Okay, I will. Thanks, David. And I'll just say to everyone who's driving, please be safe. Modeling is important, not that important. And to user RVDB. And we cannot hear you. All right, well, definitely put your introduction in the chat as Tris had. And I think, let's see, John Murphy.
Hi, my name is John Murphy. So I'm working for the Department for Communities in Northern Ireland, where I'm project development officer with a system. We're replacing a historic environment system that we have here, and we're just using Arches at the moment. I missed the first few minutes of this meeting, so I'm not sure who's
Okay.
left to be picked. So I'll pass it back to Annabelle.
All right, Alex.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Withrich. I work at Farallon, mostly behind the scenes helping support Adam and Rob with tasks related to Arches, doing testing for new releases, helping with some modeling stuff behind the scenes. So really excited to be on the call today and meet everyone.
All right, and the last person I think is Daman.
Hi, Annabelle. My name is Saman Dogra. I'm from Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. We are working on documenting the Bhotia trade routes of Uttarakhand. That's it.
All right, great. Thank you everyone for the introductions. And now we'll go into announcements. I'll just say that probably a relevant announcement for this group, Arches related, is that the second annual developer, I'm hoping it's annual, the second annual developer meeting is taking place in Belfast at the end of April. And so if you're interested in that, especially, it's development, but oftentimes modeling issues are discussed during that meeting. So if you're able to make your way to Belfast at the end of April, that would be that might be a good event for you. Alternatively, I will also be presenting at the CAA conference in Athens in early May, and I'll be presenting a general workshop on Arches. But if you have any questions about Arches and you'll be in Athens for that conference, which is the Computer Applications and Quantitative Methods in Archaeology, you can find me at that. I'll be there with my colleague Kevin Kachansky, and we'll also have an exhibition booth there. So definitely, if you're able to attend, that would be great. And I think then farther off, the Arches team will be presenting a workshop at the SIPA conference in Seoul in August, late August. And that is the SIPA conference is the documentation committee of ICOMOS. So those are some announcements, and I'll ask the group if there are any other announcements that are Arches related or implementation related. Okay, George.
I have an announcement that's pretty relevant to the group, which I put on the forum, so you might have already seen that. But together with Getty Digital and Getty Conservation, in the end, we've put together a package for Arches called OG Arches, which implements the patterns of the linked art implementation or linked art standard for applying CDOC CRM. So as it's an Arches package, it's open source, and it's available on the Getty GitHub. I'll just drop a link in here. And the way that we sort of strategy of how we build systems is that we sort of design the model independently of the system, and then we go and we try to implement it. So I'll put a link into the documentation of the modeling, which might also be interesting to people interested in implementing modeling patterns and Arches. So check it out if you're interested in a sort of baseline linked art edition of Arches or the modeling patterns that it demonstrates.
Yes, I know that linked art version 1 that was recently released. So this is a really good timing for this package. And I will say this, one of the things that we were planning to do is to stand up a demo instance that utilizes the models in this package. Hopefully that happens in the next few months, and so that the community can interact with the models in a meaningful way and see how they work. All right, great. Any other announcements?
Let's say that we have a demo that you can't interact with. I mean, you can search them, but for the purposes of this group, you can't go into the back end and play with things because otherwise it would explode. All likely has not. So we'll leave that to the professionals to stand up. But if you just want to look at what the system looks stood up with a little bit of data in there, feel free. It's there.
Okay. Great. All right. So are there any other announcements? Okay. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Adam Lodge of Farallon Geographics, who, as he has mentioned, has been with the project. He's been with the Getty Conservation as working with us and working with David for a long time, predating the Arches project. And he will be presenting on using Arches Designer. And hopefully we'll have a good conversation afterwards about the use of Arches Designer and potentially future things regarding Arches Designer. But I'll go ahead and ask Adam to take it away.
All right, thanks. Thing number one, are you seeing the correct screen? I'm showing PG admin here and Arches here.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I want to, I'm making a very much a point in this presentation of taking the conversation away from the very theoretical and sort of high level, like what is the best way to model this, that, or the other, and bring it way down to where the rubber meets the road, which is what buttons in the software do you push to actually create a model? Because it's so easy for so many users to just, especially newer users, frankly, to get to get turned off by arches because of all of the, you know, knobs and switches you have to turn to do this, that, and the other. So in order to strip away all that, and I know we will and can and should have many long discussions about ontologies and how to do things, but in order to strip that all away, I'm taking us away from even the cultural heritage field and bring for those of us that have experience with relational modeling. Everybody, well, many people should be familiar with the data model that comes standard with pretty much every relational database as a sample data model. And that's the HR data model. Super simple. It's a business domain that everybody sort of intuitively understands because we all interact with it. And it's really simple. It's employees, basically keeping track of employees within a business. And we have things like employees and departments and their salaries and their titles and then a cross table between department and employee. So I'm going to come into this assuming a modicum of understanding of relational modeling, but I'm happy to answer questions about it if it's useful. And all I want to do is transpose this well understood relational model into a series of arches graph models. And as I often do in presentations like this, I'm going to begin at the end by showing you basically the end result, and then we'll kind of go back and do some of the mechanics of how I got to the end result so you know where we're going. I'll just stop there for a moment before I jump into the guts here and just ask, any questions?
Adam, no questions, but if you could, in some cases, maximize your screen so that it's easier to see.
Sure. Yeah, I'm using a kind of huge screen. So, okay, thanks for letting me know.
Right.
I just need to access these other windows, so I will. All right, so this is how I chose to take that well understood HR model and deploy it. So in Arches, if you have appropriate privileges in Arches to actually do modeling, you have access to the Arches designer, and you can access the resource models, which is basically if you have experience with Postgres or even Microsoft Access, you can think of this as the method for building the equivalent of tables and other database objects that normally belong in a relational database. So, okay. In my case, what I chose to do is take all those tables and interpret them as two models, employees and departments. And I'm just going to briefly point out that when I do modeling, honestly, I usually begin with a text file and simply sketch out like which entities I'm going to model as individual models and which entities I'm going to model as cards or as like sort of little child tables inside of the models. So allow me to demonstrate. So in the case of employees, I created one called, oops, push the wrong button there. Oh, come on. There we go. In the case of employees, I made a very simple model with employee info, titles, and salaries. And then within each one is a series of nodes that actually store data. So, and then similarly back here, well, I'm going to switch over to departments. We built a simple model of departments where we have department information, a couple of data holding nodes, and then information about the department manager. And this,
hey Adam,
yeah,
could you just command plus a few times to make your that font a little larger? Eric had asked
there we
the
go.
chat. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks, Rob. So, all right. Ooh. All right. So, how does that? So then the question I would be asking anyway at this point is, how does this information surface like in the actual software? So I'm just going to quickly make the point that there is data here. Actually, I'm going to go to the edit view of this guy and make the point that we have some guy named Adam Lodge. He had a certain job title from a date until none, basically meaning that's his current title. And then this is a former title. And he's also has, if we go back here and look at the department that is related to him, of course, his department has a territory. And he's a department manager as modeled here. So the point is we've built a very simple model. I'm going to just point out no ontology, because there are many Arches implementations that are not in the cultural heritage field that don't require an ontology. So then the question becomes, how do we get from here to actually building this? And this is quite simple. I'm going to begin. So I'm going to just leave these guys here and go through the actual mechanics of just building a very simple model. Okay, so first things first, we name models. So I'm going to call this one employees. And I'm just going to put a W there for working. And we're going to go with no ontology for the moment. So this is where we actually name the model. And I'm just going to follow this guide that I created for myself to build all this. Now, I don't think I'm going to bother with building this whole darn thing in here for the purpose of the demo, but I do just want to build at least out of 1 or 2 cards and nodes to sort of demonstrate the process of getting from here to there. And by the way, I'm perfectly cool with questions. I'm going to have to thumb through a lot of button clicking pretty quickly. So if you want to stop me and ask a question, please don't hesitate. All right. Okay, so we're going to save this new model. Great. Now we have the simplest and most useless of models right now, which is just a one node that defines the existence of the model. Next thing, we're going to add a child to the root node, and I'm going to make this the employee info. And for the purpose of just simplicity, I'm going to call this node a semantic, therefore non-data collecting node. It's important to understand that every node can have a data type, and that in this case, we're going to go with semantic because it simply exists for the purpose of I don't know, in my mind, it's the equivalent of a table within a data model because it's defining the existence of an entity within this resource, a specific type of entity within this resource instance. I'm gonna go ahead and I have to scroll up to get to my save. Oh, I have to command back down, don't I? All right. So now within employee info, I can start adding nodes. I'm going to add a first name, call that a string, save that. Going to add a last name. Now, I realize this is old hat for most of the people on the line, but I find that it's often the case that especially when we're talking to people newer to arches, these assumptions that the understanding is there about this capability. I mean, it's not always clear. And so I think it's nice to get that, like the mechanics together. So okay, anyhow, first name, last name. I want to, and the last one I want to make a point of is this idea. I'm making a pronouns node just for the purpose of making the point that we can support a concept. Basically, with a concept being like the idea of a drop-down list that powers the options when the user is selecting the data to add. So they have to choose one of a small domain of options. So, and I'm just going to stop there. Oops. And ask, okay, is any of this new to anyone on the line? All right, cool. Then I'm gonna move on to this idea of configuring cards. The next point I want to make is that once the data in the cards are fully, or once the graph nodes are fully defined with all of their modeling options and data collecting nodes in place, then what we can do is configure cards which expose the nodes in a manner that's designed to be accessible to end users interacting with the default Arches interface. So allow me to get back to my search. All right. When we look at employees, I'm going to go back to manage the graph. All right, good. Looking at the individual cards, we have a long series of options for defining how all these data are exposed to end users for interaction. So I guess I'm not going to go through the details of all this other than to say that this is how we choose to, this is where you have all the options to choose how to expose things like, for example, like if you want to make your pronouns in as a bunch of checkboxes you can select, or whether you want it to be a drop-down. You can create alternate labels for the various nodes that you've exposed back in the data model. And you can do things like define whether things are, how do I put it, are required to be added or not. Moving on, we have all of the options for defining permissions are available in here. So you can define exactly which user groups and which users have permissions to individual cards that you have built. And of course, there's a whole other series of interfaces for defining who the users are and user groups, which is a whole ball of wax to untangle. And then we also have a series of, we have a whole user interface for defining thesauri and collections, which I'm guessing most people on the line are familiar with, but I'm not gonna even attempt to, we could easily have many presentations on that alone, but I'm just gonna make the point that the thesaurus provides the interface for generating the drop downs that power things like that pronouns field that I was showing you. So I want to pause for a moment before I get into, oh, actually, no, I don't want to pause. I want to make one other point, which is often overlooked in modeling, which is the definition of the functions, specifically the resource descriptor functions, which are you use them to expose. Let's see here. Let's get back to define what is going to be sort of the human readable like identifier or name that gets exposed in the software for actual end users to like be able to identify specific resources within the system. And then the last sort of like thing that I always have to consider is the configuration of the report within the manager. So get back to the designer, and this is sort of hidden in the interface, but within here, oh, this is not what I want to be looking at. All right, employees, there we go. Within the cards tab of the graph designer, if you go to that top thing, oh man, oh, the command. Oh, that's annoying. This was working yesterday. Image header. Okay, I'm gonna say no header. Image header. Come on, baby. Classic. All right. This is where in the interface you have the ability to have a modicum of control over the reports, which are exposed when you click on a specific resource. So, all right, so I just very quickly went through a bunch of mechanics. Maybe I'll just stop there and just hit a little bit of theory. I know Annabelle, you wanted to talk about, or I'm going to tee this up for you.
All right.
to talk just a hair about the application of branches. So I've gone out of my way here to demonstrate a super simple model, and just because, you know, so it's a building block from which to learn to build more complicated and sophisticated models. But when you do that, when you build more sophisticated models, pieces of those models can and ideally should be reused. Not only within the series of models that you have in an ARCHES system, but maybe even shared with other ARCHES systems, just like George did with OG. So one way to do that is to peel off a portion of a model. So like maybe, for example, department information into a branch. And I'm just going to stop there and tee you up, Annabelle, for a bit about the value of that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Adam. So I think when we talk about resource models, when at least when we first started to develop Arches, especially starting with Arches version 4, which is when the Arches designer began its life. Before then, you had to hard code the models into into the code, right? And so, and then with Arches version 4, we introduced the Arches designer, which is essentially a version of the user interface that Adam just went through. And one of the things that we built into this was the idea of resource models. So you can build the whole model, and then branches, which is where you had pieces of the model, or what you saw with what Adam created. He created these different branches, which ended up, and each branch corresponds to the data entry cards. And so I was talking to Adam before the meeting started, and I asked, "You're going to go into branches, aren't you?" And he said, "No, because I don't find them as useful as I thought I would in the beginning." And actually, and that made me think that, well, actually, I would like to ask this group to understand, because I know there are a lot of people here who have used Arches Designer already, and just to have a quick discussion on if you, in using Arches Designer, if you actually do use if you do, I guess, save branches and reuse branches. So I'd be interested to hear from you all what your experience has been with using branches when you're creating models, if you use them at all.
Hi, Annabelle. That's a great question. In creating the models that we did here in Auckland, I didn't use branches. I didn't tend to find them, or don't tend to find them, particularly useful. But my colleague who was working alongside me, at the beginning, she wasn't using branches either. But then there was a new node that we decided we needed to introduce to all 4 of the models that we were working on. And at that point, Rachel discovered that she actually quite liked branches, because she could make it once and then just apply that exact same configuration to all the models without having to rethink about it. So I guess it's a horses for courses in my experience.
Yeah, that's that. Thank you. Thank you for relaying that experience of Rachel's. And yeah, no, I do use branches, and it looks like in the chat, George, yes, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Knowing what George's models look like, yes, I agree. You would die without those. And then Eric mentioned that he feels that they are a lifesaver. And I think it really depends on your, yeah, as I had never heard that before, horses for courses, but now I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
So that's good. I think that's good feedback to understand about branches. And
Could I ask a question of George around branches? George, I guess my question is does the software do what you want with branches? Like, does it allow, like when you pin a branch onto a model, does it always do exactly what you expect?
No, but it does a lot more than if I had to click it all through myself.
Yeah.
And so the reason that I'm a big fan of the branches is because, like, if you're following a modeling construct like linked Dart, then it has an endpoint target solution for what you're supposed to do for a name. So I don't think about it again when I run into name information. I already have a solution for that. That's the name branch. And I don't want to think about it because I've got other problems to worry about and more interesting modeling questions. So the starting point for any of my models is like, what are the things that already need to be there? Probably the name, probably a description, blah, blah, blah. And then I just click them in via the import function, and that works really well. The part where it gets tricky is when you have a bunch of like, if you repeat that pattern in a couple places, then you need to obviously have unique names for your branches, and they're like functionality wise, it would be great to have a feature where you'd be like, I'm inserting like this nested below the following thing, and then it would offer me some automatic renaming features. Like I'm putting a name branch underneath production because I'm very interested in the names of production events. Why? Who knows? But it's possible. And so I would like import it, and then if it were to say, hey, it looks like you're importing this underneath a blah branch, would you like me to automatically like rename this following a pattern? And then he said yes, then that would even further turbocharge the model building process. It would just be like, here are my Lego bits, click, click, click. Okay, the basic model is done, and then you start working on the fun stuff. Hopefully,
Do you I mean, really, my assertion about the future of branches is like, I think we should either like double down on them and really make them like maintain them really well and enhance their capabilities, like with what you just described, or we should ditch them. But to kind of half maintain them doesn't feel, I don't know. That's kind of where I feel like we are at the moment, just based on whatever limited resources and all that. But anyhow, thank you for answering the question. I mean, that's it. That's great feedback.
I don't want to rabbit hole this, but just following up on that last thing, like, or on the idea of it, like, if one were to double down on them, the other thing that they do is once you've like applied them, is that it's because you want a consistent shape throughout the model, and then as your system evolves, you might make different decisions, and then if you've made a different decision on a fundamental pattern, then tracking down in each model and fixing it, and not only fixing like the model, but if you have data in it, fixing the data is another thing. So like if there was a cascading feature where you would be like, I'm going to update, I no longer believe in the the linked art, or linked art tells me it's no longer A, it's B. And so then I would like pick up the pattern and change it from A to B. And then my applied branches would be like, oh, hello, I'm here. I'm on A pattern, but you're on B pattern. And then you could, coordinate that. It would be like, then go write everything differently in the database and then rewrite the model for me everywhere. Thank you. That would be wonderful.
I know Rob has, I mean, before you talk, I know Rob has interesting future information on that for you, but I'll just say that that's not just a modeling problem, that's an ETL problem. If you have data in the system, right? Because you're essentially migrating data from one model to another, which is it's hard. It's really hard. But Rob, please, I know there's future work on that.
Yeah. And I just point out Ron in the chat, who I think is having microphone problems, but he pointed out that, I mean, basically stated in a different words the same feature request that you're stating there, George, or at least that his expectation was that branches would behave in that way, which is a very reasonable expectation. I can say I don't know that that particular feature is going to be built out for 8.0. There's a bunch of stuff happening, right? But I can say that we've put in place, in effect, the breadcrumbs that would be required to implement such a feature. So suffice it to say, there's in version 8, there will be some memory of the source branch that was used to apply to a model, and that could be built out in the way that towards that feature that you're describing. One thing we're working a lot on is migrating data across model changes, and as Adam points out, this is non-trivial. But there will be tools in place for doing that. at the moment, it's essentially a programming exercise. You know, you have to write the code to do those migrations across model changes. But in the case of branches, that could potentially be simplified in some ways, in the sense that, you know, those migrations, if you could apply a migration to a specific branch, you could use that across resource models, I suppose. So there's obviously work being done there.
Okay, great. Yeah, so definitely, I think as we move forward with our governance initiative, I think there are things like this where the community can start to weigh in on what's useful, on features that are useful and what's not useful, and use cases. So and forums like this or groups like this will definitely be instrumental, or at least help to feed into how the project and how the software starts to evolve over time. I do want to shift gears because we have one more item on the agenda, and that is the I guess the debut of this new feature of this user group, which is Modeling Clinic. And Maini was so kind as to post her modeling issue or problem. And I don't know if everyone has had a chance to take a look at it. I'll go ahead. Well, actually, Maini, would you like to just quickly describe what you would like as a result?
Oh my. That's all right, no problem. So I'm probably just going to read out what I wrote in the chat in the forum, which is, so one of the models that we created for our system, we've called it heritage item, and it's basically just collecting information about our heritage assets. I think others tend to use that term. And so the system that we migrated out of was very, very text-based, and it had a whole lot of these narrative text fields where you had descriptions, and then you had additional notes, and then you had significant summaries and all sorts of things like that. So when I was looking at the data in it, I thought, well, they're all narrative text. I'm going to pop them all in one node, and I'm going to call it item descriptions. And I'm going to give it a string in order to collect the text. So that's that E62 there, the description. And then I'll give it a description type, which is a concept, so that the users can then use that to categorize what sort of description it is. So that's where we started. And then once we actually implemented our instance and went live with it, we started using it, and we realized, well, actually, in order to expose more information and make it more usable to our public users, so not our external users from our organization, we wanted to be able to let them see a brief summary of the heritage item, the heritage asset. But in order to do that, that would need different user permissions than the item descriptions. So the solution that I could find, not being a back-end technical programmer, was to use the Arches designer and add a new node to the model that I could assign different permissions to. So that resulted in this addition of the summary node, which essentially is also collecting a text narrative. And I was just, I guess, wondering, and I thought this would be a good forum to have this discussion in, whether that, is from a modeling best practice view, an acceptable approach to achieve this outcome. Just trying to understand a bit more about the technicalities behind modeling and what makes for a good model. So if people have got views, and I'm also new to using CDOC ontology, so I don't know in all instances that I've applied it as it should be applied. So any feedback on that would also be very, very much appreciated. As Annabelle's showing there, the details of the nodes shows you whether they're, so the semantics that I've used from the ontology and the data type. So hopefully that's a good little summary.
I think so. And
simple problem, hopefully. I thought it would be good just to kick off with something.
Yeah, no, I think I think it is a really good, simple problem. And I will open it up to the group too. And does anyone have any initial thoughts?
I just want to quickly say your solution is super practical.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's what you can achieve when you don't have any developers and technical specialists on hand and you can't do any coding. And I should also say thank you to Annabelle, because I posted the question of if we could, because previously we found that in order to make changes to the model, we would need to dump all the data from the model. But Annabelle pointed out that if you're inserting a new node that is completely empty, then often you can manage to do that without doing a data dump. So that was incredibly helpful as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, and just to, and yeah, George, go ahead.
Yeah.
I think this is great. And like this solves the problem and is good modeling. If you and is a practice that I would do too as well, like from a functional point of view, where you have the same ontological background, like this is the same kind of information, but you have a different functional role for the data. And so you really need to pick it out for your users and for your management. If you wanted to, you could, like, if you CDOC CRM doesn't have a lot of properties to lean on. So if you were following this path further along, you could run out of possibilities because you've got P67 and you've got P129, and then you'll kind of have hit the end of the road. And so without, if you want to make it fully expandable, you could use the same pattern for your summary as you used for item descriptions. And so you could keep on using P67 and you could put another type on there and you could just make it like a set type and call it summary and hide it. So the user doesn't even have to think about it, but semantically you've encoded, like, for the user, you've tipped them off, like you're putting different information in here. You can put different access rights. Semantically, you encode forever that it's a summary. And then if you have to make more nodes like this, you could do so.
Thank you. That's incredibly useful. I did initially, when I first started creating models, I did try to keep following that pattern and have, how would I put it, as you suggested just now, the having a type there that was then hidden, and it was, what did I do? I think I set it up so that it had a default value of summary, but in talking with others in my organization, they found that they thought that it was overcomplicating things. So I simplified it. So I guess you get into this thing where it's, you get this interesting discussion between the people that are sort of, how would I put it, doing the modeling from a more pure modeling aspect, I guess, whereas the others that are sort of a bit more on the periphery and they're sort of like, well, but if nobody's going to put data in there, then why do we actually need that node?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And I see there's a question there from somebody around, what was it? Whether I was having replicated data. No, it isn't replicated data. The summary, so basically the way we're dare I say, enforcing it, is that summaries do not go into that item description node. That is the one piece of data that you don't put in there. Summaries will only go into the summary node, whereas other things like that additional notes that we've migrated over and the legacy, the original description, they all go into that item descriptions node. So it's not replicating of data.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well,
we're running out of time, I see.
No, we are running out of time. I'm happy to stay on a little longer. And
that's fine.
Yeah, but I will say that that is an issue, right? Where it is trying to explain the reason for having somewhat, better semantics, because that functionally this works for you, obviously, but
yes.
It might, but I think oftentimes when we're talking about having what George described is, which is what I was going to say as well, which is to also include that type there and have it be hidden. And then the question from other people might be, which you described was, well, why do we have this if it's, if it's a default? Well, what we always say is that if you're exporting that data, then it becomes more important.
Great, thank you. Now I have my answer because I tried to explain that it's about having the ontology, and therefore what you're trying to do is, with the whole idea of the ontology, is that we're trying to provide for data longevity so that others, in the future, when they take the data out, they understand better what we were trying to achieve. So yes, talking about it in terms of when the data is exported is a good solution. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. If anyone else has any additional thoughts for Meini, you can definitely add them to the thread that is on the forum if you have additional thoughts to continue that conversation. But otherwise, I think we can start. I'm going to go ahead and start to close the meeting. And I'll go ahead and start to close the meeting. And thank you all for attending. Again, this meeting is quarterly, so we will probably have another meeting towards the end of the next quarter, which is June. And if you have any ideas for topics, definitely let me know, and I'll try to organize something around that topic if something you think is something that we should be covering. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.